Welcome to day 11 of our 30 days through the Psalms. Today we read Psalms 51 to 55, and today I want us to read some verses from Psalm 55. Now, this psalm was probably written by David at the time of his fleeing Jerusalem and crossing the brook Kidron and then heading out towards the eastern part of Israel, because his son Absalom had staged a coup and they were seeking to destroy David's life, to kill him, so that Absalom could take the throne. And this conspiracy had grown stronger and stronger. And in fact, one of David's closest friends and counselors, a man named Ahithophel, had betrayed David terribly. Probably the greatest betrayal of David's life was when this man Ahithophel, whom he had, he says, taken sweet counsel with. This was his friend, his companion. This was one of the guys that he felt he could trust. He was on the inner circle of David's kingdom for years and years. And when David needed counsel and wisdom, this was the man he would go to. And the two of them, spend time together and speak through the matter. And Ahithophel would always give incredibly wise counsel. His counsel was like the voice of God in the days of David. And yet when Absalom staged his coup, for some reason Ahithophel betrayed David and sided with Absalom, and it broke David's heart. And it was of Ahithophel's disloyalty and betrayal that David speaks of in this psalm. So in the first half of the psalm, he is pouring his heart out to God. He is so low emotionally. He is feeling incredibly betrayed and vulnerable, because this man whose counsel is so powerful and so wise is now advising his son who wants to kill him. In verse 12 he says, "For it is not an enemy who reproaches me, then I could bear it, nor is it one who hates me who has exalted himself against me. Then I could hide from him. But it was you, Ahithophel, a man my equal, my companion and my acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together, and we walked to the house of God in the throng." They went to church together. These were two guys that, if he was going to go to church and worship in the temple, this is the man he wanted to be with. They were so close. And yet this man has betrayed him. And previously he'd said that fearfulness and trembling had taken a hold of him. His heart had completely lost its courage. It was severely pained within him. And then in verse 16 we reach this moment where David now strengthens himself. What is David's response to all of this trouble and betrayal and danger? And I want to read these verses to you from verse 16. "As for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon I will pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice." So I just want to stop there for a second, and I think it's fair to say that every single one of us are going to need an "as for me" mentality, because we're all going to have "as for me" moments in this life. In other words, there's going to be moments where so much trouble and danger and betrayal and hardship and heartbreak are befalling you, and yet these things are completely out of your control. And there is something that you can control, and that's your relationship with God, but that's all you can control. As for me, I'm not going to worry about the things that I can't control. I'm not going to fret and stress, even as Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow, because you can't even turn one hair black or white on your head. Just sufficient for the day is its own trouble. You call on God. You present your case to God. That's what you can do. And this is what David says: "As for me," there's all this thing going on, but as for me. And here's the point: if you're in a position like that in your life right now, there is something you can do. As for you, what can you do? As for me, I will call upon God. You can call upon him, and you must call upon him. As for me, I will call upon God. And then listen to this statement of faith. And the Lord shall save me. Now, how does David know that? How does he know when I call upon God, he's going to save me? Well, he repeats the same sentiment in the next verse. Evening and morning and at noon, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, I will pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. I'm going to cry aloud 3 times a day, and he is going to hear my voice. Now, how did David know that? When you are in the burning cauldron of betrayal and hardship and fear and trembling, when you get alone in your little prayer closet and you cry aloud and you call upon God, how can you know, how can you have a certainty, have a confidence that God is going to hear you? Well, let's read verse 18. He has redeemed my soul. He has, in the past, he has redeemed my soul in peace from the battle that was against me. For there were many against me. Let me read you the note that I made this morning. Remember the deliverances of God in the past, and let them drive you to your knees in faith for the present and give you hope for the future. You've got to build altars. That's what Abraham used to do when God had encountered him. He built an altar to remember. As David looks back, he's now fleeing from his son. It seems like he is imminently going to be executed. His best friend has betrayed him. But he says, as for me, I will call upon God, and I know he will hear the voice of my cry. How do I know? Because as I look back on my life, I have been through countless battles. There have been many enemies against me in the past, and God has delivered me out of every single one of them. And the same God who's been faithful to me in the past will continue to be faithful to me in the future. The same God who has heard the voice of my cry as I've called upon him is the same God who is going to deliver me now. You know, even when David killed Goliath, he said, the Lord has delivered the bear and the lion into my hand. I've killed a bear, I've killed a lion protecting the sheep. And just as God delivered me from those, he's going to deliver me from you, Goliath. And it's the same principle holding true here. He looks back and he says, the same God who has delivered me from the Philistines and the Amorites and every single army that's ever attacked me. God has given me victory every time. And it's the same God who's going to deliver me now, because God doesn't change. He is faithful, and he will hear the voice of my cry. And so I want to encourage you, if you are having any kind of trouble in your life today, do what David did. You do what you can control, which is call upon God morning, noon, and night. Cry aloud to him, but cry aloud in the faith that he will hear you. And strengthen your faith. Encourage yourself by looking back at what the Lord has done for you in the past. Because all of us have got memories. When we look back on our Christian lives, there are stories we can tell of how God has answered prayer and how God has delivered us when we thought it was massive trouble. Well, let's give God honor and glory for the things he's done in the past by trusting him for today's battles. God bless you. See you tomorrow.